Japan has one of the lowest bankruptcy rates on Earth. Their household savings rate sits between 17 and 20%. The average American saves somewhere between 3 and 5%. There are over 33,000 businesses in Japan, over a century old. The United States has fewer than 100 companies that old. Nobody in the mainstream financial world is asking why. Today, that changes, and nothing will look the same after. Hit subscribe if you want to keep running the real math. Rule number 7 alone will reframe every purchase you make today. Rule number 4 is embarrassingly simple and almost nobody in the West does it. What I am about to show you is not a trend. This is not minimalism aesthetic from some corner of the internet. This is a complete financial operating system most people never discover. The West built an entire culture around spending as a signal of success. Buy the car, upgrade the phone, book the trip, look the part. Japan took a completely different path decades ago and quietly won. And the most dangerous thing about what you are about to learn. These rules work so quietly you will not feel them building your wealth. Until one day you look up and you are completely free. That is the goal. And this is how Japan got there. Every self-help book in America sold you Ikigai as a happiness tool. Japan uses it as a financial filter. And those are not the same thing. That difference is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. Most Westerners think Ikigai means find your passion and the money follows. That is not what Japanese financial culture actually teaches at all. The real Japanese framework has 4 overlapping circles that must all connect. What you love, what the world needs, what you are good at. And the West always leaves out what you can be paid for. When all 4 align, you do not have a passion project anymore. You have a career that compounds over decades instead of restarting every few years. Here is the financial cost of missing that 4th circle completely. The average American changes careers, not jobs, careers between 5 and 7 times. Every switch resets seniority, resets reputation, resets the earnings trajectory you built. Each restart costs an estimated 3 to 5 years of compounding income growth. If you change careers 3 times, that is potentially 15 years of lost momentum. Japanese artisans who do one thing for 40 years do not look exciting to Western eyes. But a Michelin-starred ramen master with a 2-year wait list is not struggling financially. The Ikigai audit is simple and you can do it right now while listening. Take a piece of paper and draw 4 overlapping circles on it. Label them: love, good at, paid for, and what the world needs. Sit with the center where all 4 meet and be ruthlessly honest. If your current work lives outside that center, you are paying a financial penalty every single month. That penalty compounds silently in the background while you think you are doing fine. Knowing your purpose means nothing if you spend like you have none, which brings us to the rule that completely rewired how I think about money. Japan has an invisible financial accountability system built into their culture permanently. It has no applicativo, no subscription fee, no guru, and no algorithm. It is called Haji, and it silently keeps millions of people from financial ruin. In Western culture, debt has been quietly rebranded as ambition. The person with the least BMW and the credit card balance looks successful. The person quietly living below their means looks like they are not trying. This inversion is not accidental. It is engineered, and it is expensive. Japan operates under a fundamentally different social contract around money and appearance. Spending beyond your means does not signal ambition in Japanese financial culture. It signals a loss of control, and loss of control carries weight there. Nobody makes a speech about it. Nobody posts about it. Nobody calls you out. The accountability is ambient, which is actually more powerful than any external system. Here is what makes Haji financially useful rather than just culturally interesting. It is not shame used as a punishment. That version is destructive and we ignore it. The productive version is honor used as a directional compass in daily spending decisions. You ask a silent question before each purchase. Does this reflect who I am? Americans who carry debt and fake it statistically carry that debt for longer. Research consistently shows that social permission to normalize debt increases debt duration. When your community quietly expects financial discipline, you find financial discipline faster. You can install your own version of this without moving to Tokyo. Pick 2 or 3 people whose financial judgment you genuinely respect and admire. Do not tell them your plan, but let their imagined reaction sit in your head. Before a purchase you know is impulsive, ask what they would think seeing you do it. That single mental move activates the same psychological mechanism without any social contract. The U.S. household debt-to-income ratio hovers around 101%. Japan's sits closer to 65%, and the gap has been consistent for decades. That gap is not a natural thrift. It is a cultural architecture that was built intentionally. Rule number 3 was invented in 19-0-4 by Japan's first female journalist. It has no algorithm, no dashboard, no AI, and no subscription fee. And it statistically outperforms every modern budgeting app currently on the market. Her name was Tanomoshi-Ko, and she created a budgeting method called Kakeibo. The word translates roughly as household financial ledger, but that undersells what it does. Kakeibo is built around 4 questions you answer by hand every single month. First question, how much money do I have available this month in total? Second question, how much do I actually want to save this month specifically? Third question, how much am I spending and on what exactly right now? Fourth question, how can I improve the gap between what I earn and what I waste? The physical act of writing your finances changes how your brain processes them. When you type a number into an app, the friction is essentially 0. When you write it by hand, your brain encodes the loss differently than digital entry. Neuroscience research confirms that handwriting activates regions associated with deeper encoding and memory. You feel what you write in a way, you simply do not feel what you tap. Kakeibo users in documented studies save on average 35% more than app users. The app doesn't match, so you do not have to. And that is the problem. Pain in processing your spending is not a bug in Kakeibo. It is the feature. Setting up your own Kakeibo takes 15 minutes and costs you nothing at all. Buy a simple notebook, not a fancy journal, a plain inexpensive notebook with lined pages. On the first page, write your monthly income and your savings target for this month. Divide your spending into 4 categories: survival, optional, cultural, and unexpected. Survival covers rent, food, and transportation, things that are genuinely non-negotiable. Optional covers everything else that brings comfort but is not strictly required for life. Cultural covers books, experiences, education, things that make you more over time. Unexpected is your buffer for what life will definitely throw at you this month. At the end of every week, write down what you spent and where it actually went. At the end of the month, answer the 4th question honestly and without softening it. Most Western budgeting mistakes involve tracking spending after the fact to justify it. Kakeibo requires you to set the intention before the month even starts. That single reversal eliminates the most common and most expensive budgeting failure mode. Rule number 3 shows you where your money goes each and every month. Rule number 4 shows you why you were programmed to waste it in the first place. And this next part is the part that most finance channels will never show you, because it makes their sponsors very uncomfortable. There is a single Japanese word that would save the average American around $14,000 per year. It is not a hack, it is not a trick, and it requires no willpower to maintain. It is a feeling, and Western consumer culture spent decades training it out of you. The word is Mottainai, and it describes the deep, visceral regret of wasting something. Not the polite social regret of saying, oh, that is a shame, something deeper. The feeling that wasting a resource is almost physically painful because it was not used fully. Mottainai applies to food left on a plate that could have been tomorrow's lunch. It applies to clothing worn twice and donated to feel virtuous instead of used completely. It applies to the gym membership running quietly in the background you never actually use. It applies to the laptop you upgraded because the new one looked sleeker than the working one. The average American household throws away approximately 32% of the food it purchases. That is not a small number. That is 1 in 3 grocery runs going directly into the trash. Japanese food waste rates run at approximately less than half that figure by comparison. The difference is not income level. Japan is not a poorer country than the United States. The difference is a culturally embedded feeling of loss when something is wasted before full use. Western advertising exists specifically to replace this feeling with something more profitable for others. The upgrade cycle only functions if you feel nothing throwing away something that still works. The subscription economy only functions if you feel nothing paying for things you never use. The fast fashion model only functions if you feel nothing discarding something after 3 wearings. Mottainai is the antidote. And here's how you rebuild the reflex deliberately and practically. Switch 1. Before upgrading any device, ask whether it can perform your core tasks still. Switch 2. Before buying new clothing, count how many times you wore the last equivalent item. Switch 3. Before letting a subscription renew, audit whether you used it more than twice this month. Switch 4. Before discarding food, Ask what can be repurposed before it becomes expensive waste. Switch 5. Extend this logic to your time, your attention, your energy, and your relationships. None of this is suffering. It is the opposite of suffering when you do it right. Mottainai is not deprivation. It is the decision to use what you have until it is actually done. Now, once you stop wasting, you need somewhere to put what you saved. And rule number 5 reveals a system that Japanese households have used for decades to build wealth. Forget index funds for a moment, and forget the entire conversation about optimal portfolio allocation. The wealthiest ordinary Japanese households built their financial foundation using nothing but envelopes. The system is called Shunyu Bunpai, which means income allocation, and it is strikingly simple. When income arrives, you do not pay bills and spend what remains afterward, like most Westerners do. You allocate every single yen to a labeled envelope before you spend a single yen. The categories Japanese families use are not complicated and do not require a finance degree. Fixed expenses go in one envelope. Rent, utilities, the things that do not change month to month. Daily living goes in a second envelope. Food, transportation, the things that vary slightly but matter. Long-term savings goes in a third envelope, and this envelope is sealed before you touch the others. Emergency fund goes in a fourth envelope, and this money does not exist for any other purpose. Enjoyment goes in a fifth, and this one matters, because sustainability requires joy built into the system. The psychological power of physical separation is not a theory. It is documented in behavioral economics. When money is separated into labeled physical containers, spending from the wrong container creates friction. Digital banking blends everything into one number, which makes it far easier to rationalize overspending. Your savings account sitting next to your checking account in one app is not separated in your mind. You know it is there? You know the exact number, and you will use it during a weak moment. The envelope system makes that weak moment harder, which is the entire point of the design. You can adapt this to modern digital banking in 2025 without using physical paper envelopes. Open multiple sub-accounts at your bank and give each one a specific, non-negotiable label and purpose. Transfer allocations on payday. Not when you think about it, not when you feel motivated. On payday. Automate every transfer so the decision is made once and then never made again by a tired version of you. Japan Post Bank is the largest savings institution in the entire world by total deposits held. That fact is not an accident. It is the institutional infrastructure of a savings-first financial culture. Western banks never promoted the envelope method because it limits the revenue they earn from overdrafts. Follow the money when you are wondering why you were never taught a system that actually works. The envelope system controls how you spend every single month without requiring daily discipline from you. But rule number 6 controls something even more powerful: how you think about what your skills are worth. In Japan, a man who makes noodles for 40 years can become a millionaire. In America, that same man is told to hustle, pivot, scale, diversify, and monetize his audience. One of these strategies builds quiet generational wealth over a lifetime of compounding mastery. The other builds exhaustion, scattered skill sets, and an income plateau that feels like a ceiling. The Japanese concept is called Shokunin, and it translates roughly as craftsman or artisan. But the financial dimension is what nobody in the West ever seems to talk about openly. Deep mastery of one skill compounds in earning power, the same way money compounds in investment accounts. In year 1, you are a competent practitioner. You earn competent practitioner rates and no more. In year 5, you are a recognized specialist, and specialists command a meaningful premium over generalists. In year 15, you are the person people call when the problem actually matters to them financially. In year 30, you are a reference, a category, sometimes a name that functions like a credential. The Western career model says to build T-shaped skills, broad horizontal knowledge, with one vertical depth. The Shokunin model says ignore the horizontal entirely and go so deep the comparison becomes impossible. A Japanese master craftsman's work sells for 10,000% more than equivalent Western manufactured products. That multiplier is not marketing. It is what happens when skill becomes irreplaceable through time and repetition. The burnout crisis in Western professional culture is not a wellness problem or a self-care gap. It is the direct financial and psychological cost of trying to be good at too many things simultaneously. Finding your Shokunin is not about passion. Passion is a feeling, and feelings fluctuate by the week. It is about identifying what you can go deeper in than the market currently rewards people for going. Ask yourself, what is the thing I keep getting asked about that I dismiss as just something I do? That dismissal is the tell. It means you are already further down the path than you realize. Industries where Shokunin thinking pays the highest premium right now are not difficult to identify clearly. Specialized medicine, precision engineering, elite software architecture, bespoke finance, and skilled trades are all there. Any field where the difference between competent and masterful is visible and measurable rewards Shokunin deeply. The contrast is stark burnout, skill dilution, and income plateau on one path. And on the other, compounding mastery that makes your time worth more as it passes, not less. Now here is rule number 7, and I told you at the beginning, this one would hit different. I was not lying to you. Japan has a concept for empty space, intentional silence, and deliberate pause. They call it ma. They apply ma to architecture, to music, to visual art, and to the way conversations breathe naturally. The wealthy Japanese also apply it to their finances. And the effect is automatic and compounding. No Western financial advisor has ever recommended this specific practice in a client meeting. Ma, in financial terms, means the intentional pause that lives between the desire to spend and the decision to spend. That pause is not hesitation. Hesitation is passive and slightly anxious in its quality. Ma is active, intentional, and completely calm in its delivery. Neuroscience research shows that a 72-hour delay before a non-essential purchase reduces follow-through by 60%. Not willpower, a time delay built deliberately into the decision-making process itself. You do not fight the desire to buy the thing. You simply create a gap of 3 days. 60% of the time, the desire resolves itself without you having to say no even once. Ma in investing means not constantly repositioning your portfolio in response to market noise and media panic. The most famous research on this comes from Fidelity Investments, and what they found was striking. The best performing retail investment accounts in their dataset belonged to people who forgot they had them. Not people who were skilled, not people who were informed, not people who were disciplined day to day. People who did nothing, and that nothing compounded into results. The active traders could not match. Stillness in a portfolio is not passivity. It is the application of Ma to your wealth directly. The financial silence practice that comes from Ma is something you can build into your week today. Choose 1 day per week where you make 0 discretionary purchases of any kind whatsoever. Not a fast, not suffering, a single day of financial stillness each week, every week, without exception. What you discover on that day is more valuable than any budgeting system you will ever read about. You discover what your actual relationship with spending is when spending is simply not an option today. Most people discover that they spend out of boredom, out of habit, or out of mild anxiety more than need. Ma teaches you to pause and sit in the space between stimulus and response without filling it immediately. Rule number 8 teaches you what to do with the money you preserve during that pause. Using a system so old and so powerful that Warren Buffett accidentally rediscovered its core principle himself. Thousands of years before credit unions, before modern banking, before Wall Street had a zip code, Japan had this. Communities were building wealth together using a rotating savings system with a near-zero default rate. They called it Tanomoshi-Ko. And when Western banks discovered it, they did not promote it to customers. They weaponized the concept and turned it into the highest margin product in their entire portfolio. Here is how Tanomoshi-Ko actually works in its original community form. A group of trusted individuals, 10, 20, sometimes more, each commits to a fixed monthly contribution. Every month, one member of the group receives the entire pool in a rotating lump sum. No interest charges, no application fees, no credit score requirement, no approval process from an institution. The accountability is social. The commitment to your community is the mechanism that makes defaults nearly impossible. The default rate on formal bank loans in the United States sits around 2 to 5%. The default rate on Tanomoshi-Ko style rotating systems documented globally sits close to 0%. 0% default. No interest, no fees, and no bank involved at any point in the process. When Western banks studied this system, they kept the rotating structure and added interest charges to it. They removed the community accountability element and replaced it with credit scores and penalty fees. Then they sold that product back to the communities who originally invented the interest-free version of it. You can form a modern Tanomoshi-Ko group right now with people you genuinely trust and respect. Between 5 and 10 people works best for a first group, enough to matter, small enough to manage. Set a fixed monthly contribution amount that is challenging but achievable for every single member of the group. Rotate the payout in a pre-agreed order, decide at the start and document it clearly before any money moves. Open a shared account or use a transparent app like Splitwise to keep the full record visible to everyone. The legal structure is simple. It is a private lending arrangement between consenting and trusted adults. Communities across the world still use versions of this system successfully, including Korean Guy and Caribbean. Warren Buffett's principle of patient capital accumulation and community accountability mirrors exactly what this system does. Community savings is powerful, and it changes your relationship with money in ways individual budgeting cannot. But rule number 9 is about something Japan does with money that is invisible to outside observers. And it explains why Japanese wealth lasts for generations, while Western wealth disappears within 3. In America, birthday gifts for children are typically toys, things that break, fade, or get replaced by next season. In Japan, financial gifts follow rules so precise and so culturally embedded that they function as wealth transfers. The tradition is called Otoshidama, and it is the practice of gifting money during New Year's celebrations. The amounts are not random. They follow age-appropriate scales with documented and culturally agreed ranges. An 80-year-old receives a different amount than a 16-year-old, and everyone understands the scale. By the time the average Japanese child reaches 18, they have received the equivalent of a meaningful down payment. And here is the part that separates Japanese gifting culture from Western gifting culture completely. The conversation about what to do with that money is built into the giving ritual itself from the beginning. Japanese parents talk about money in front of their children the way Western parents avoid it entirely. Compound interest is explained to Japanese children before they fully understand multiplication at school. The concept of money growing over time is introduced as a natural, beautiful feature of patient saving. In Western households, money is the topic that gets changed when children walk into the room. Research consistently shows that 70% of family wealth in America disappears by the second generation. 90% is gone by the third. And this is not because the children are irresponsible by nature. It is because nobody taught them the rules while they were still young enough to internalize them fully. The Otoshidama system embeds financial literacy into celebration, so the learning carries emotional weight and sticks. You can build a Western equivalent of this without the cultural context surrounding you naturally. Start giving structured financial gifts instead of object gifts to children in your family from a young age. Open a brokerage or savings account in their name and make the gift a deposit, not a toy. Sit with them when you make the deposit and explain exactly what it is doing and why it matters. Give them a simple chart showing what $100 becomes over 20 years at a reasonable rate. Let them see the number grow quarterly and watch their relationship with money become completely different from yours. Generational wealth does not begin with inheritance. It begins with conversations that happen early and often enough. And now we reach rule number 10, the final rule and the one I saved deliberately for last. This is not a tactic, not a habit, not a system you install and optimize. Over 3 months, it is a complete philosophical shift, and once you understand it, everything else in this video clicks permanently. The West chases financial perfection, the perfect portfolio, the perfect budget, the perfect market entry point. Japan has a philosophy called Wabi-Sabi that says imperfection is not the obstacle, imperfection is the point. And paradoxically, it is this acceptance of imperfection that produces the most financially stable lives on Earth. Wabi-Sabi began as an aesthetic philosophy, valuing beauty in things that are worn, asymmetrical, and incomplete. In financial application, it becomes the antidote to analysis paralysis and the single most common wealth destruction pattern in the West. Perfectionism destroys more Western financial progress than ignorance, poverty, or market conditions combined. The person waiting for the perfect time to invest has been waiting for 14 years with cash in hand. The person waiting to feel ready to budget has been meaning to do it since their third job change. The person waiting for the right portfolio allocation has missed 2 complete market cycles optimizing a spreadsheet. Wabi-Sabi says the imperfect action taken today compounds into something real in a way that the perfect plan never does. The Japanese approach to investing is not to get it exactly right on day one. It is to begin and stay. Begin with the wrong amount, on the wrong day, in the imperfect market condition, with the imperfect allocation. Stay for decades, adjust slightly as understanding grows, and let the imperfect position compound into freedom over time. Wabi-Sabi spending means finding genuine satisfaction in what you currently own before it is replaced or upgraded. The Japanese concept of mono no aware, the bittersweet beauty of things as they are applies to your possessions. The phone that works, the car that runs, the apartment that shelters you, there is beauty in their full use. Lifestyle inflation is the mechanism that destroys Western wealth most efficiently and most silently. Every time income rises, the purchase of a better version of what you already have consumes the compounding opportunity. Wabi-Sabi does not say you cannot upgrade. It says upgrade from satisfaction, not from dissatisfaction with what works. The mental health dimension of this philosophy is not a bonus. It is the core of why it works financially. Financial anxiety in the West is structurally built into a system designed to make you feel perpetually behind. The Japanese concept of financial acceptance is not resignation. It is the decision to build from exactly where you stand. Imperfect action compounded honestly over a long time is the only real wealth formula that has ever worked. That is the system underneath all 10 rules. Not 10 separate ideas, but one complete operating philosophy. Ikigai gives you earning direction and keeps you from restarting your financial momentum every few years. Haji gives your spending the invisible accountability that no app, no spreadsheet, and no guru can replicate. Kakeibo gives your budget the physical weight that makes you feel your financial decisions before you regret them. Mottainai gives your possessions their full value by requiring you to extract everything from them before replacing. The envelope system gives your income a destination before your impulses give it a worse one. Shokunin gives your career the depth that makes your time worth more as years pass rather than less. Ma gives your financial decisions the pause that turns 60% of bad ones into avoided ones naturally. Tanomoshi-Ko gives your wealth the community accountability that no individual discipline can sustain alone. Otoshidama gives your family the conversations and rituals that stop generational wealth from disappearing in 2 cycles. Wabi-Sabi gives your entire financial life the permission to begin imperfectly and stay honestly for long enough to matter. Japan did not get rich by earning more than everyone else. This is critical to understand completely. They built an entire culture specifically designed to keep wealth once it was created inside the community. Here is your one assignment before this week ends and before next month starts without you acting. Pick one rule. Just one, and install it into your life before midnight tonight. Not all 10. Not the 3 that excited you most. Just the one that stings the most right now. The one that stings is the one your financial situation needs first. Comment below which rule shocked you most, and which one are you actually starting with this week? I want to see those answers because they tell me exactly what to build next for you here. Next week, I am showing you the exact 5 Japanese investing strategies that rebuilt a shattered post-war economy. Japan became the world's 3rd largest economy in 30 years, and these strategies started with nothing. Next week, I show you how to apply every single one of them starting with $100 today. Drop a like if this video shifted something. It genuinely helps more than you think it does. I only make videos they do not want you to see, and subscribing keeps them finding you automatically. See you next week.